We're very happy that we're joined by Sandy Darity and by Derek here at Howard University. It's always good to have our colleagues participate. And I just want to, because my time is shorter than those who gave presentations, limit it to a portion about what has not been discussed, and then give some direct comments about the things that have been discussed. What this downturn did is highlight some things that we did not experience during the Great Depression, things that we did not think about. During the Great Depression, we did have a few states that actually did go bankrupt, just as we have some municipal governments now going bankrupt. But the size of the stimulus from the second term, and we want to keep this in perspective, the second term of FDR, not the first term of FDR, sort of helped to address some of the things that states faced. But what is clear from this downturn that is unique in the post-World War II era is something that we should have learned from Katrina and from other catastrophes. We do not insure the public sector. Our demand for schooling, our demand for safe communities, that doesn't abate even though our incomes may have fallen, even though revenues at the local level may have fallen. What has happened in this recovery is that we have not addressed what happens to the public sector. So as a result, we are still down over 600,000 jobs in the public sector. Most of those are teachers. So in the midst of what we're doing, we have decimated our investment in our future by increasing class size for our children. No one is discussing the adequate replacement of those public sector workers. None of that demand has gone away. Every week we get reminded of how unsafe our country is, whether it's a young high school student being shot in Chicago or a young 5-year-old being kidnapped or a whole classroom of first graders being murdered. Our demand for safety has not gone down. Our demand for teachers has not gone down. Our demand for roads has not gone down. So the supply of those things should not go down. So we have to think about how do we insure the public sector. There are two elements to insuring the public sector that we have not considered. We have not considered what market failure means. All of the discussion around Social Security and the threat that Congressman Scott made clear, well, had we privatized Social Security, as some people had wanted us to do back during the Clinton administration, and then faced what we had in 2008, would really be screaming right now. But in the public sector, this is what happened. Public sector pension funds went from $3 billion to just above $2 billion. That's a loss of 33%, a whole $1 trillion, from $3 trillion to $2 trillion, a whole $1 trillion worth of pension fund wealth disappeared. So at the same time that the revenues for local government were plummeting, local and state governments had to make up $1 trillion from market failure. And these are the pressures that are being put on local government employment. So we must have some response. We must build in some safety valves to address, going forward, the effect of these financial bubbles on the real economy. And this is how they affect the real economy. We heard one idea, the financial transactions tax, which makes perfect sense because the real risk to the economy comes from financial bubbles. We don't think about having some sort of insurance for these things. We do have insurance for private pension plans. We don't have insurance for public pension plans. So I think the financial transaction tax makes a lot of sense so that we can start to think about what is it that we really need to insure within our economy. The discussion within Congress has to immediately start to address the continued decline in the public sector. Now, every president, every elected president since Roosevelt has raised the minimum wage, except Ronald Reagan. President Obama did not raise the minimum wage his first term. This is his term to raise the minimum wage. Now, the minimum wage needs to get back to its historic level, which is half the minimum wage, half the average wage. Now, when it gets back to that, that means we're talking somewhere around $12 an hour in order to restore the floor of our labor market. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it instantly. There are glide paths one can imagine that get us there, but until we get the minimum wage to be back to half the average wage, then all of the statistics that Dr. Darity brought out, that is, the whole issue of those who are working and poor, this real oxymoron of working and poor, will continue to be the case. And of course, if you had a $12 an hour minimum wage, then you're talking somewhere around $24,000 a year. So somewhere in our discussions has to be the restoration of the minimum wage and the restoration of the low-wage labor market. We have not talked here about immigration reform, which has to be part of the conversation because we have to restore normalization to the low-wage labor market. We cannot have normalization of the low-wage labor market with people living in the shadows, with job opportunities being in the shadows, and with working conditions being in the shadows. It's absolutely necessary that we bring everyone out of the shadows and normalize their relationships so that they can have normal working conditions. But those of us in the African American community should not limit ourselves to the discussion of the low-wage part. We have to be engaged in the discussion of the H-1B visa and the high-wage labor market discussion going on. Remember, African Americans are far more likely to major in computer science than are whites. At one point, we were twice as likely to major in computer science as whites. That is a black job. Historically, it has been a black job. If you think about when did companies first get computers, it was really to mechanize the personnel function. It was to run wage data and to do payroll checks and accounting functions. That took the place of women and blacks, and those who had those jobs initially in data processing were women and black. Look at Prince George's County. That county is the middle-class black mecca because those are black IT workers. So we cannot excuse ourselves from the discussion of the high-wage information technology and immigration question. Those are our jobs, and those are the jobs that we're doing now. I want to challenge my colleagues to be very bold as they think about responses to the current crises. There is a tendency, unfortunately, to think of the administration as a monolith. There are lots of people inside the administration from very different perspectives. When those on the outside take positions that are to the right of people inside the administration, then you neuter the people in the administration who are your friends. If you don't speak the truth, if you're trying to negotiate with yourselves before you negotiate with the administration, you hurt the debate that goes on inside the administration. So we have to learn how to play the inside-outside game in a far more aggressive way. That doesn't mean you disrespect the president, as some people think is the way to do it. But you engage the administration, be forceful in your ideas, but be true with your ideas so that we can make sure that those inside the administration who are on the right side of things get help and can be a better resource both to those of us on the outside and to the administration and to the president, so that the voices and decisions that he has the set of options before him to face make sense both to those of us on the outside and to solving the problems that we face.